$1,000 a month. That is all you need to survive in retirement. Sure, you might need to live in the right spot or maybe get some government support, but you can do it, and that's what we're looking at today. Places in the United States that you could live on $1,000 a month. Now, I'm not talking about a camper in a Walmart parking lot and feeding pigeons for entertainment. You're also not going to have to crash in your kid's spare room if you don't want to, next to a Peloton nobody uses. Real homes or apartments, quiet streets, actual peace, in towns you've never heard of because nobody was trying to sell these to you. For years, retirement has been pitched as a lifestyle brand. Golf carts, flawless teeth, and perfect sunsets with a drink in your hand. That's what I always thought retirement was, and that's just going off of the commercials I see. But what if they were lying to you this whole time? For most Americans, that retirement is an illusion. It's a lie. It's a fabrication, or it's a cruel joke in some cases. Most Americans retire on Social Security and a little government assistance. The towns on this list are towns that are affordable and have plenty of assistance for retirees. So if you spend your time searching for affordable retirement, affordable real estate, and great towns to retire, this video is for you. Let's take a look. Number 10, New Ulm, Minnesota. If you don't mind cold, this is a great place to live. This is a town of about 15,000 that was founded by German immigrants back in the day. New Ulm isn't a place you accidentally pass through on a road trip. You commit to it, usually right after you look at your rent statement, laugh once, and decide you're done funding someone else's second vacation. Housing here is modest. Not charmingly modest, not HGTV modest, just modest. The kind of prices that make you squint at the listing photo waiting for a reveal. The reveal is winter. Winter doesn't ease in. It arrives early, unannounced, like a relative who needs a couch and brought some of their stuff. It hangs around a little too long, takes over everything, and absolutely does not read social cues about when it's time to leave. If you hate the cold, New Ulm will test that relationship aggressively. But here's the thing, if you could make peace with the cold, this is an oddly comfortable place to live. Days are predictable, expenses behave themselves, nothing surprises you. And that's kind of the point. The town runs on routines that haven't changed in decades. Casseroles that double as building material, and conversations that start in the grocery store and somehow finish in the parking lot. People here don't need newspapers or apps to tell them what's happening. They already heard about it, probably yesterday, from someone who knows the person involved. As far as retirement goes here, Minnesota is really big on senior support and retirement support. There are plenty of different functions you can go to, plenty of community events, and plenty of community support. Now, you want to move here? The average home value is about $227,000, and the average one-bedroom apartment goes for about $745 a month. Their overall cost of living is 8% below the national average. All the other stats across the board are decent. Low crime, health and safety is high, they have good doctors, good hospitals. It's a small town. They don't have a big nightlife. That's all you got to worry about. If you want to keep it around that $1,000 mark, you will need to participate in some of the government support and Meals on Wheels, things of that nature. Number 9, Salina, Kansas. Salina is one of those places that never raises its voice. It doesn't have to. It sits there in the middle of Kansas, quietly doing its job like a dependable appliance you bought 20 years ago that somehow still works perfectly while everything new breaks after the warranty expires. Speaking of that, my washing machine just died. Had to get a new one. While I was paying for it, it occurred to me that my cell phone costs twice as much as a new washing machine. There's something wrong with that. Moving on. In Salina, you're close enough to everything you need, yet far enough from everything that makes your blood pressure spike. No coastal drama, no mountain town pricing games, just flat land, big skies, and a town that understands the concept of enough. The housing market in Salina is what normal used to feel like. Not blinking, it's gone insane. Not starter home costs as much as a yacht, ridiculous. You can browse listings without emotionally preparing yourself first. Prices don't ambush you, and property taxes don't feel like a second mortgage hiding in the bushes. It's one of those rare places where buying a house feels like a financial decision, not a moral test of how much suffering you're willing to endure. Daily life here stays mercifully affordable. Groceries don't require strategic planning. Gas prices don't inspire group texts. And going out to eat doesn't come with the quiet guilt of having spent too much for the experience. Things cost what they should cost. That alone is a retirement perk nobody brags enough about. Salina runs on practicality, not hype, and for retirees, that is gold. What really seals the deal is how well Kansas treats its older residents. There's a solid menu of senior assistance programs, tax breaks, and services that don't require a master's degree to understand. Healthcare access is surprisingly decent for a town this size, and you're not driving 2 hours to see a specialist. Salina isn't flashy, it's just accommodating, and that matters more when your idea of excitement involves a smooth doctor appointment and a parking lot with actual open spaces. Salina won't try and change you. It won't demand you keep up. It just offers stability, fairness, and a slower rhythm that feels intentional instead of accidental. For retirement, that's the sweet spot. A place where your money lasts, your days feel manageable, and nobody's trying to sell you a lifestyle. You want to get a house here? The average home value is about $167,000. So let's say you're moving from out west or someplace near the East Coast. You can sell the home you're in, buy a house outright in Salina, and still have money left over. If you're in California, you have a lot of money left over. According to a couple different websites, rent here can go for as low as $725 for a one-bedroom apartment, but the average is about $765. Their overall cost of living is 13% below the national average. Number 8, Toledo, Ohio. If you ever watched MASH, that's how most of us found out about Toledo, Ohio. That is where the Mud Hens are from, and Corporal Klinger. Remember him from MASH? He's the guy that dressed like a woman to try and get out of the military. He, by the way, is one of the few members of MASH that is still alive, Jamie Farr. Today, Toledo has an energy of a city that clocked out of the personality contest years ago, and in doing so, it stumbled into something valuable. It's not trying to wow anyone. It's not chasing trends, it's just existing along Lake Erie, quietly affordable, like it forgot to raise prices when everyone else did. Home values stay well below the national average, and that alone changes how you feel about the place. Unless you're working part-time at Dollar General, you're probably not sweating over bills in Toledo, Ohio. Now, don't get me wrong, Toledo does have some problems. They've had a lot of serious poverty over the years, and they don't have a lot of jobs. But if you're retired, you're not looking for a job. You're looking for affordability, and Toledo delivers affordability. Now, I'm sure some people are going to bring up the crime, but really it's not that bad. It was at one point, let's say 10 years ago, and it's gotten better over the years. Right now, their crime rate is 78% above the national average. 5 years ago, I did a video on cities in Ohio, and Toledo then had a crime rate that was 142% above the national average. So 78 is doing a lot better. Is it perfect? No. Is it the worst in the United States? Absolutely not. But here's how affordable this place is. The average home value has gone up 2.3% over the last year, all the way up to $125,000. The typical rent for a one-bedroom apartment is $725, and their overall cost of living is 13% below the national average. Number 7, Hutchinson, Kansas. Like everything in Kansas, Hutchinson is kind of boring, and if you're retired, well, for a lot of retirees, that's very appealing. Hutchinson sits northwest of Wichita and has around 40,000 residents. This place was founded in 1871, and as most places out this direction, it was kind of put in place because of the train. Back in the day, if train tracks showed up, a town popped up. These days, if you got train tracks, a homeless camp pops up. This is one of the mellowest places to live in one of the mellowest states. It's a pretty good place to live overall, but if you're retired, even more so. What makes Hutchinson click for retirees is how little effort daily life requires. Traffic exists in theory. Errands don't become half-day expeditions. Doctors, pharmacies, grocery stores, and the kinds of restaurants where the portions assume you skipped lunch are all in the right place. Senior services are solid, not performative, and the community actually uses them, which tells you everything you need to know. This isn't a town pretending to welcome retirees while quietly hoping tech workers show up instead. Retired people are part of the plan here, not an afterthought. Overall, this is a very comfortable place to live. Hutchinson doesn't lurch from boom to bust or reinvent itself every time a consultant flies in with a PowerPoint. People settle in, they stay put, they recognize each other at the hardware store and mean it when they ask how they're doing. That's the type of stability that helps a retiree maintain its mental health and overall well-being. If you want to retire here, the average home value is about $140,000, and the typical rent for a one-bedroom is about $755. Overall, their cost of living is a whopping 14% below the national average. Number 6, Akron, Ohio. Akron has a reputation, mostly built by people who've never once tried to make a paycheck behave itself. Akron is the easy punchline if you've only driven past it on the highway or heard a joke from someone who thinks affordability is a pretend word. But if you've ever stared at your bank account and thought there has to be another way, Akron starts making a lot more sense. Housing here still lives in the real world. You could buy a place without needing a cosigner and a priest to perform an exorcism on your FICO score. Rentals are priced like someone actually expects tenants to pay them, and property taxes don't feel like a reoccurring punishment for owning 4 walls and a roof. For retirees, that means fixed incomes go further without turning every month into a financial endurance test. Akron doesn't pretend to be perfect, not at all. Some neighborhoods are rough around the edges. Certain blocks clearly missed a few memos about reinvention, but there's an honesty in that. The city isn't changing for your fantasy version of itself. You're paying for something solid, lived in, and surprisingly stable, especially for a place this size. The population here is still under 200,000, but every year they lose more people, so it's just a matter of time before they're well under 175,000. One other cool thing, this is where you'll find the University of Akron and the Akron Zips. This football team, I don't know if they're that bad or they just have attendance problems, but you could show up late and sit in the front row. They might even ask you your opinion on the next play. What Akron still offers, and what so many cities quietly lost, is access. A way in without selling your future. A way to stay without being priced out in 5 years. For retirement, that's enormous. You get breathing room, health care nearby, seasons that change on schedule, and a cost of living that doesn't keep moving the goalposts. Akron may not beg for your attention, but it quietly is making your money last. And that's a talent worth respecting. The average home value here is $132,000. The average rent is $725, and their overall cost of living is 16% below the national average. This segment is sponsored by Trust and Will. You ever notice how nobody wants to talk about estate planning? We all know we need to do it, but somehow we just don't. 83% of Americans believe estate planning is important, yet only 31% have wills. Well, there's good news. Trust and Will makes the whole thing ridiculously simple. No courthouse, no 3-hour meeting with a lawyer, just an easy digital solution that walks you through everything step by step. Whether you just got married, bought a house, had a kid, or had one of those, oh yep, life is short moments, Trust and Will helps you protect the people you care about. You can set up a guardianship for your kids or your pets, choose who gets your assets, and make sure nobody's fighting over that jade elephant you brought back from your trip to the Philippines in '72. And the peace of mind? It's huge. When the time comes, your loved ones will have clarity instead of chaos. That alone is totally worth it. Trust and Will has 2 main options. The will-based plan, starting at $199, that's perfect for newlyweds, parents, and anyone who just wants a straightforward plan. And then there's the trust-based plan, starting at $499. That's great for homeowners, families planning ahead, plus it helps you avoid probate and keep things private. It's incredibly easy to use. Seriously, if you can order a pizza online, you could set up your own estate plan. And of course, Trust and Will isn't a substitute for legal counsel if you've got a complex situation. But for most of us, it's exactly what we need. So take control of your future the simple way. Go to Trust and Will and get started today. Back to the video. Number 5, Danville, Virginia. Danville didn't chase a miracle. It didn't roll out flashy slogans or pretend it was about to become the next big thing. Instead, it did something much rarer. It improved itself quietly while keeping housing costs well below the national average, like a town that fixed the roof before buying furniture. That alone puts it in a very small club, where common sense reigns supreme. The downtown revival here actually feels useful. Sidewalks got better, buildings got cleaned up, businesses showed up that the people genuinely needed, not the kind that exist just to look good in photos. Rents didn't suddenly spike, home prices didn't sprint ahead of paychecks. The whole thing feels less than a rebranding, more like basic maintenance finally getting done. For retirees, that's the magic. You can settle in without that nagging sense that you're arriving right before the prices explode. Affordability here doesn't feel fragile or temporary. It feels baked in. You're not braced for the next wave of discovery to jack up everything. Here, you could buy a home, walk downtown, and enjoy the fact that improvements didn't come with an eviction notice attached. The average home value in Danville is $152,000, and the typical average rent I should say, is about $765 for one bedroom. Their overall cost of living is 17% below the national average. Number 4, Ponca City, Oklahoma. Ponca City is a town of about 25,000 residents that sits northwest of Tulsa, Oklahoma. This is a town that's getting more affordable because they've been losing people since the 2000 election. So in case you don't know, there's a nice balancing act when it comes to cities, states, and small towns. If people start leaving because it has nothing to offer, eventually the price gets so low, people start coming back. I think that's where Ponca City is right now. And I think it's a great place for retirees because their cost of living is through the floor and so is their housing. Now they got some crime, not the worst in the world, but it's 40% above the national average. For a smaller town, that's not good, but it's not the end of the world. Housing is definitely the rare sweet spot. Homes are cheap enough to feel comforting, like you're breathing again, and not so cheap that you start asking follow-up questions about the structural integrity or missing neighbors. Sure, it's Oklahoma, and Oklahoma kind of sucks, but sometimes you enjoy a little suckage because the prices are so low. Talk to your friends, they're all, Ponca City, that place sucks. Yeah, but my mortgage is $450 a month. And your friends look at you and go, yeah, that checks out. So once you get past the fact that you're living in Oklahoma, Ponca City isn't that bad. They also have this really cool World War II heritage theme going on there, which I love World War II stuff, so I think that's pretty cool. Now, retirement is the real luxury here. Less noise, fewer surprises, and more room just to be retired. They've got plenty of services to help you. Everything's affordable. You could move here, retire, relax, and pray you don't get hit by a tornado. The average home value here is $129,000. The typical one bedroom goes for $725 a month, and their overall cost of living is 18% below the national average. Number 3, Richmond, Indiana. Richmond, Indiana is the kind of town that makes financial sense before it makes an impression. You'll fall in love with it, but not in a dramatic way. It wins you over slowly, mostly because it's not causing any problems in your life, which a lot of towns you move to, they're causing problems. Not Richmond, Indiana. There's an old saying that a young girl will date a sports car, but she'll marry a station wagon. Richmond is the station wagon of towns in Indiana. But the cool thing is the housing market is where Richmond really shines. Prices sit well below the national average, and they've been so low for so long it feels kind of permanent. The housing and the cost of living here are so low, it feels kind of illegal, like you're doing something wrong. The stats for this place are great, and they only have about 36,000 residents. And if you're jonesing for a big city feel, Indianapolis is just to the west. Richmond works for retirement because it doesn't complicate things. It doesn't sell hope, it sells consistency and affordability. The kind that lets your savings last, your routine settle in, and your day stretch out without pressure. It's not exciting, and that's exactly the point. The average home value in Richmond is $150,000, and the typical rent for one bedroom is $690. Their overall cost of living is 19% below the national average. That's insane, but it's not the best. Number 2, Pittsburg, Kansas. Pittsburg operates on its own clock, and that clock isn't in a hurry. Days unfold at a pace that assumes you finish your coffee and maybe stared out the window for a bit before doing anything ambitious. The real estate market follows the same philosophy. No hype, no bidding wars that feel like a game show. Just you buy a home. Homes here are reasonable. They use math, but sometimes it doesn't feel like it. You feel like you're just buying a home. Even the utilities here behave themselves. They're 5% lower than the national average, and considering utility companies are blood-sucking vampires, that's a pretty good thing. Pittsburg sits on the Missouri-Kansas border, not too far from Joplin. Joplin's really not a big city. If you need a big city, you're looking at a 2-hour drive to Kansas City. or about an hour and a half to Springfield, Missouri. All in all, it's really not a bad place to live. It's got a little crime, but nothing to get excited about. All their other stats are kind of average, except when you get to cost of living and housing. They're well below on both. So if you're not desperate for entertainment and you like to save a lot of money, Pittsburg, Kansas is calling your name, especially if you're retired. The average home value here is $86,000, almost $87,000, and their typical rent for a one bedroom is $726. That is definitely reasonable. Their cost of living is 20% below the national average. Yeah, you'll save some money here. All right, before we get to number 1, if you live in any of these cities, I'd like to know your opinion. Let us know in the comment section below. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Grenada, Mississippi. Now, Grenada, it's not the best place, but it sure is affordable. Before we get going, there's some things you should know. There's 2 different stories to this town. There is a nicer up and coming part that's by the highway. That's kind of nice, but you have some neighborhoods that look like they're stuck in the 1940s in like a poverty-stricken neighborhood. What used to be a very attractive, let's say Main Street or downtown, is now one of those episodes of After Humans, you know, where they show what the world would look like if humans just disappeared. Yes, they've been gone for 20 years, it looks like, in this part. But like I said, it's very affordable. If you're looking to save money, this is a great option. You don't have to live that worn out 1940s looking neighborhood. They've got some nice areas, especially on the outskirts of town, where you can get a decent house with some property for a pretty low price. If your goal is to live someplace where you can afford a house and afford to live on just Social Security, this is a great option. Just stay out of the bad part of town and you'll be perfectly fine. Mississippi is another state that does a lot for their seniors and their retirees. Now, this whole video has been about retirement, but in reality, it could be for remote workers also, because they share something in common. They don't care about schools and they don't care about jobs. They're either retired and don't need a job, or they're a remote worker and they don't need a job. And most remote workers, they don't have kids. So it's great for either. Here's their numbers. The average home value in Grenada, Mississippi is $126,000. The average rent, $550 a month for a one bedroom. Their cost of living is 22% below the national average. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Now go out, have a great day, be nice to each other.